Welcome back to the BeBetter Podcast. I'm glad to have you here. I have an amazing guest lined up for us today. His name is Nick Mosseri. This dude, anything he touches, he makes it better. And I wanted to have him on the show because I think that could bring value to us. But let me say this first. This dude does like some great stuff. Like he is a movie film producer. He is a podcast producer. He is consultant for big companies such as Nike. He also started a record label at 18. Like who does that? He does it. But a part of all those great accolades that he has under his belt, I'd say the thing that's just knowing him personally, the thing that's probably the most important to him is his family. And this dude, his family is amazing. His wife is great. She's amazing. And then they have 3 kids that I personally know as well. I don't know what he did. He should write a book. Him and his wife should write a book about how to be a parent or how to, I don't know, contain a household right now in this crazy world that we're in. But I think he has so much to bring to the table. Anytime I talk to him, I take so much from it. And so I wanted to have him on as a guest. But here's the thing I'd love for you to do. At the very end of the episode, I have the trailer attached to this new movie. It's called Sitting in Bars with Cakes. It's on Prime. Please click the trailer at the end of the episode. Enjoy. All right, everybody, I have Nick Mosseri. Nick, we've known each other, I think we're going on maybe 4 years. We met once at a coffee shop. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
When I first met you?
Republic of Pie.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's 4 years ago. Nick's one of the, I don't try to bring on guests. It's either like I've been recommended somebody to come onto the show, or just someone I really look up to, or I know there's just genuine people and they bring value to the show. And Nick, I wanted to have you on here because I think you're one of the sincerest people I know. You're super like authentic. Every time we talk, I take something from it, and I figured that the audience that I have can take something from our conversation. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks. I'm excited to do this with you. So yeah, I mean, where to begin? Grew up outside the Seattle area. Been in LA for the last 15 years now. I'm married to my wife. We've been married for almost 21 years. We got 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, 17, 15, 13. I am a sometimes movie producer, sometimes podcast producer, sometimes marketing consultant.
How long have you been out in Hollywood, Los Angeles?
So kind of this time around, I tried it right after undergrad in 2000, only lasted about 6 months, or 2001. It didn't go well for a lot of reasons. But then we moved back down here from Seattle to LA in 2008. I did grad school at UCLA in their producers program, and then I've been working in and around the entertainment industry since.
Did you ever jump into acting as well?
No, I mean, I'm not shy around cameras and microphones and things like that, but no, I've dabbled in some stand-up here and there, but no, no acting.
I heard stand-up's really hard.
I guess. I mean, I've done it a couple times. I mean, I've done it a handful of times, but I like doing it when I'm out on a business trip or doing projects. I'll like go to an open mic and just give myself a challenge of like, all right, you got 2 hours, write 5-10 minutes of stuff and see how it goes, and it usually goes pretty well.
I've heard many times that public speaking is like, some people have that fear over actually dying, but you actually like intentionally challenge yourself to go and do it.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I just think it's fun to get to communicate with an audience in that way, and I don't mind making a fool of myself because it's funny to me. Yeah. So I don't mind.
What feedback? Are you pretty good?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, because I'm my harshest critic. Like, I know whether or not what I've done in anything is good or not, and then the feedback usually either just confirms.
Yeah, that's dope, man. One of the things that I really admire about you is you're like, I think it's curiosity and your willingness to try stuff. Because from the stories that you and I just us talking, you've mentioned like different stuff that you've done, like consulting. I think you work for Nike as a consultant, something like that, right? Um, Producing podcasts. Like it's not the most common jobs that people have, and then you're just doing it. What gave you that lack of fear to go and do it?
I mean, it started as a kid. I mean, I don't totally know how or why, but I just loved the idea of like, how do you, well, first of all, I just am fascinated by other cultures and jobs and professions and people. And so then it was like, well, how can I get in there? And so, I mean, I had all kinds of, oh, yeah, it's interesting. Going back, I mean, I think part of where it came from was my grandfather and my dad were car dealers, and so I worked in the car dealership from the time I was probably 11 or 12, and I worked in the parts department or in the body shop or in the detail department, or once I could drive, I could work on the lot, move the cars around. And a dealership is a really interesting microcosm of society, and our dealership was the sales and the sales floor and business was upstairs. Downstairs was the body shop, the parts department, that kind of thing. And so it was this really like, it was just differences of class and race and everything. And so it was just a chance to get to see so many different people doing different things, and even just people's cars, like the way people took care of cars or didn't take care of cars or what kind of messes they had was really interesting. And then, um, yeah, I don't know. I just always thought I could do it. So, I mean, I started a record label when I was 18. I've worked as a cook. I, yeah, I mean, so many weird jobs and careers through the years.
It's weird because so I know your kids personally. My wife and I say like, is there something the Moseris can't do? And actually, your middle child, she told us sports. Sports is probably the thing we can't do.
I was just gonna say, yeah, none of us are gonna be professional athletes. Like we're all athletic-ish. Like run around, play tennis, whatever. Like skateboard. I love skateboarding, and me and my son do it. But yeah, that's not so much our world.
Is there something that you discovered? Because your kids are probably, I think, I'm just going to be honest here. I think they're probably more well-rounded than a lot of adults I know. Just chatting with them, like it seems like they're very confident or comfortable in their skin, so they can talk whether it's a teenager or an adult. They seem like they can handle themselves either way. Is there something that you and Beth discovered that like we gotta set the foundation this way that works?
I mean, I think a lot of it was just modeling how we behave. I mean, Beth came from a great family, and she was very confident in who she was and was well loved and nurtured. Um, I came from a good family as well, but also like I I was a funny looking kid growing up, and so I remember I had really buck teeth, terrible teeth, and I would think I was in kindergarten, and these middle school kids like chased me around the track and threw me down and said, "Don't trip on your teeth." And then I didn't know that I was chubby until someone pointed out to me. I didn't know that I had a big nose until someone pointed out to me. I mean, I remember I was probably 10 years old, and some older kid called me pubic head, and I didn't understand that joke for about 3 or 4 years, and then I was like, "Oh, good joke." Yeah. And so I just decided that part of it was like learning to be funny to survive, and so just like learning to not take it personally and just deflecting it. But I had a pretty mean sense of humor, like very sarcastic and cutting. And then when I met Beth, my wife, we like to say that she softened my edges and I sharpened hers.
Huh.
And I think that, just being with someone who really did love me for me, warts and all, and then vice versa, seeing that, there is a way to, I don't know, just be a little bit more aggressive and fearless at times with things. And so in that, I think we were really comfortable in our skin and knew who we were. And then when we had our kids, we're just trying to be really thoughtful about just loving and liking them each uniquely and celebrating who they are and who they were when they were younger. And and also, yeah, I think just trying to yeah, instill in them that like being who they are is who they're supposed to be. Like you don't need to worry about everyone else, and everyone else is really worried about themselves anyways. And so,
Right.
you know, yeah.
Was there something maybe you learned along the way, like tangible, like uh, I'm around a lot of teenagers with just church and ministry stuff. I think your kids are probably one of the few that don't have a cell phone that they carry with them all the time. Is that something intentional, or was it like you guys learned that that's not the direction to go, or what are some things like that that you guys figured out?
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I think that, we're in our early 40s. And so we remember a time before cell phones and iPads and laptops and all that kind of stuff. And I think we just saw for the kids, like, we didn't want to just hand them phones or devices as pacifiers. And that's not to say our kids never watch TV or never use an iPad or whatever. Um, but we felt, as we had to introduce into our lives, like the pull of those devices is so strong, and the pull of social media and getting caught up in what people think and say and all that stuff, like, is so powerful that it just felt irresponsible to put it in the hands of a child, without a lot of supervision. And we're not policing everything they do, but because we trust them, but we also check in a lot, and we do check search histories and all that kind of stuff. And but we did make a conscious decision that not to give them phones. And kind of our tweak on that was when they've turned 15, we've got them Apple Watches because we can still text them. They can, call us if they need to. And um, yeah, I think we just felt like adding just that pressure and that outside influence of other people and things, just because we see so much unhealthy stuff, that we just felt like it was better not to put that in their lives.
Is there a have you guys figured out when the like when's the green light? When is it, or is it kind of case by case per their personality? Like when they can have a phone, be more responsible with it, or like dating. Like I've had a conversation with your kids that dating's not at the top of priorities. Like period, school and getting yourself further ahead is a priority, which I don't hear that often with kids, and I don't hear that's an intentional thing. So I'm curious if there's like I don't know, an equation in your guys' mind where you figure like this is the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, our oldest, I mean, technically there's a phone that's attached to the watch that sometimes she carries around, but like she doesn't have social media. She's not really on it. So, I mean, when she goes to college, she's probably gonna have a phone, and she's gonna have to learn how to deal with that stuff on her own. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly case by case. It's kid by kid. But it's been really nice to avoid just some of the more damaging stuff that we've seen friends and others experience with that. And then, with our kids, like, we love hanging out with them. Like, we spend so much time with them. Like, we all get up at the same time, and we have breakfast together most days, and we have dinner together most nights. And on weekends, we're hanging out and going and doing stuff together. And even evenings, we don't watch. I mean, like, we'll watch shows together sometimes, but most of the time, like, we're in the living room, like, reading, listening to music, hanging out. The kids will be in there, and the kids sometimes in the living room will have devices, but they're doing art or they're making music. Yeah, I mean, the dating thing, like, I think dating, unless you can do something about it, like get married, is super pointless. And so it's like, just save yourself. I mean, I went through so much heartache and heartbreak and angst and emotion trying to quote unquote date people when I was in, middle school and high school and even college. And like, it just hurt. And I'm like, why do that to yourselves? And so, yeah, I mean, thankfully it hasn't been a big issue, but I'm also just like, why? To me, like, so much is like, just don't waste your time on stuff that's not worth your time.
Would you think that? Would you say that that's like a key philosophy for you? Because in the stuff I've we've had conversations about. It seems like you're I call it the Midas touch. Like everything you do seems to like turn to gold, but it seems very strategic, like intentional. It's not like just I'm gonna try it and we'll see. I think there's some of it that you're willing to learn, and then there's some that it just seems like there's strategy, even in how you parent, and you as a producer in film. Like it seems like there's a lot of stuff that you do with intention. Would you say that's how you approach it?
Yeah, I don't think it's strategy. I think it is for sure intention, because strategy would require that, like, I've employed this before and I know how it's going to work. Like you can't know that with parenting. With producing I can be strategic. With parenting,
Yeah.
you are learning as you go, but it's certainly intentional. And I think that my mind works in such a way that I can see a lot of steps ahead in a lot of different directions. So, if someone makes this choice, I can sort of see down the road as to like what those choices might lead to or what those actions might lead to. And so if I can help my kids, develop that mindset, but then also, not avoid every challenge, because you can't. Like, your kids have to experience challenges and heartbreak and heartache and all that stuff, because that's going to build resiliency. But there just is things that I've seen that it, yeah, just it feels like if I can help be intentional with them and teach them how to be intentional, it's just going to serve them well longer term. So yeah, so I mean, I guess there is a lot of intention, but with parenting, like, every kid, everything's going to throw you a loop in a different way. I mean, whether it's, just every human being is wired differently. So, one kid's anxiety or another kid's, health issues or whatever, like, you try to, you know, deal with each one in their own individual way, and then you hope for the best. And then at a certain point, which we're about to experience the next year, like, they're out of the house, they're on their own. And we've told them too, like, look, you're going to make mistakes, just try not to make the same ones over again, and also we've told the kids, like, don't hide anything from us, because just in life, like, you will get caught no matter what. Like, adults, kids, whatever, like, if you try to hide stuff, you're going to get caught. And so bring us into those challenges, those struggles, those mistakes early on. And what we've committed to them is, like, we'll work through it with you. And I said, I haven't promised that I'm not going to be mad. like I might be really upset, but know that upset, that anger, frustration, whatever it is, comes out of a place of love. But my promise, my commitment to you is that I'm going to work with you through this. Like, I'm never going to abandon you. And so, take someone who's committed to you, who's upset, versus someone who's indifferent and doesn't care. Like, I'll take that all day.
Was that something you guys figured out along the way, or is it seeing your own folks and how they raised you guys, that commitment level to? Because it sounds, I don't know, maybe did you guys have that conversation, like, my commitment to you is this, or is it just kind of nonverbal and everybody just knows?
No, we've verbalized it so they understand where it comes from. And I mean, like, my wife and I said to each other, man, when before we got married, it was like, I told my wife, I was like, we are going to make each other feel the best that anyone could make anyone feel, and we're going to make each other feel worse than anyone else can make us feel. And right. So, we hope not to make our kids feel terrible, but at the same time, like, we're going to make mistakes, we're going to mess up. And so I think we've also tried to model for the kids, like, some people do the, like, do as I say, not as I do. And then people feel all this pressure that, like, oh my gosh, then that means I've got to do it perfectly or else my kids are going to mess up or whatever. And for us, it's like, we just try to be honest in our own mistakes, our own struggles, our own fears, anxieties, whatever. So that they can see modeled, like, okay, how do you deal with that? Like, even like my wife and I, we love each other. My wife's my best friend. We still have conflict. We are human beings. We're not robots. And, especially being in the pandemic, we're all together, like, the kids were aware of more conflict than they ever had been before. And I think it was just a high stress time for everyone. But we told the kids, like, my wife and I were able to say, like, we love each other. We are committed to each other. Yes, we're in conflict, but we are also committed to figuring it out and working through this conflict. And then they see, whether it's, hours or a day or something later, like, okay, mom and dad are back on the same page. We don't go announce them like, we're conflict free, we've figured out, it's not that, but they get to see that. I just think that's so important. I think it's so important for parents and just people to, not be afraid to admit mistakes, but also to then have that commitment to fill it, to seeing them through, to actually like go through the journey. And I think most people don't feel that with their bosses or their teammates or whatever. I mean, I try to do that when I'm producing. It's like, hey, don't hide problems from me. I love solving problems and I love to help solve them. So bring them to me. Yeah, I might get upset in the short term, but like, I'm committed to figuring this out. You're not alone. And I think that's a huge thing, is communicating to people, whether it's your kids, your employees, your coworkers, whatever, that like, you're not alone.
So is this not technically a parent thing, but like a human thing? Like, we should communicate, because there are some faults I've noticed as well, that when people try to hide it and sweep it under the rug, it just comes back later and it bites you in the butt even harder. And especially if you don't have the support, you're almost dwindling down that hole even faster because you can't get yourself out. It sounds like your world's kind of intertwined. Like, your producer hat and dad hat don't seem to be that much different. Out of like, it's your kids as opposed to an employee, but it seems like your personality or your gifts intertwine in those spaces.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it comes down to, I love solving puzzles and problems, and I love like getting into the mess and the muck with the kids, with people, and when I'm producing or whatever, like, again, it goes back to that curiosity. Like, there's no job, there's no role, there's no anything that is below me. Like, and so sometimes there'll be times when, the kids have put off doing an assignment, and it's like, all right, like, I'm staying up with you. I need you to see that, like, this has a consequence. Like, I don't want to stay up, but I'm going to stay up with you because that's going to be helpful for you. I'm going to like work through this thing with you. And I think in that way, it communicates to people, a value and love in some sense, certainly with my kids. But also, like, when you see what your actions, the consequences they have on other people, and then watch them work with you to solve them, it's a really strong reminder to try not to do that again, as opposed to just getting yelled at or just getting, I don't know, punished or shamed or whatever. Like, I just don't think that has the same impact.
I want to jump into that curiosity thing, but there's something that I'm curious about, how it doesn't need to go political, just the tension that happened during the political aspects of where society was during COVID with the George Floyd and the presidential stuff. And it seemed like, I think there was tension because of division, where people were, as a generalization, where we were. How did you and Beth, did you guys consciously have a discussion? This is how we're going to approach it. Us as a parents and husband and wife and household, like, how are we going to deal with this?
I would say Beth and I my wife don't have a lot of like separate strategy conversations. Like, this is how we're going to tackle it. I mean, sometimes we do, but I would say we tend to just use the dinner table, the breakfast table, as a time to sort of just talk through that stuff as a family. And I would say that, she and I are aligned enough that we don't have to have a lot of like pre-planning conversations. We can kind of just jump into it. But, with the pandemic and everything that was going on, we've just always had a policy of being honest to our kids. Like, we don't lie to them. Like, we keep it age appropriate, right? So, I mean, at different stages and ages, you're going to tell them different things, but my kids are teenagers now, which means that like, they're going to get the real, and so we talk about, who the people are, why are these things happening, what systemically leads to these things, how are people reacting and responding, good, bad, otherwise. And I think that through all that stuff, like, the piece that we kept just talking about was that like, people are not listening to each other. People are not loving each other. People are not for each other. And I think that there was such a time to put aside our preferences and seek common ground or at least seek some understanding and trying to look out for those who are most vulnerable. And unfortunately, that's not the decision that most people want to make. I think most people want to feel justified, accepted, right, and that's fine, but it's just limiting. I think that if you can look at in any different situation, whatever your opinion, belief, stance, preference, whatever it is, like there's still space to go. You person on this other side, you're a human being. Like, how do I develop relationship with you? And look, that doesn't mean be a doormat, and that doesn't mean that you let people hurt you, abuse you, any of that kind of stuff. But it's like, just trying to find a reasonableness.
I guess we were just talking about curiosity. It sounds like it's intertwined in that as well. Just listening to the other side and be curious about maybe someone that doesn't sound like you, vote like you, look like you. Because that, in my opinion, that leads to empathy, where now empathy moves you as opposed to just taking a stance. And I think in many cases, most people are willing to be right at the cost of a relationship. And I think that's where we're not listening.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed it. Like, I definitely think that true curiosity leads to empathy. Like, the more you know about people, I think the more that you can understand them and see the common ground. And, so as different political, social, whatever topics come up, I try to do my best to, do my research and kind of try to understand the other side. It's hard, right? I mean, I think it's hard for all different kinds of people, but I always feel like I think you have to look at the motivations of the people oftentimes who are screaming the loudest, who are wanting the most attention, who are trying to divide and trying to say it's this way or it's this way or whatever. And like, a lot of times the motivation is money or power or influence. And I just don't think it's that simple. Like, I do think there are black and white issues, and I think that there are voices crying out that are marginalized and hurting and things like that. So I'm not talking about any of that, but I'm just talking about like, the way that media, whether it's, mainstream media, social media, fringe media, cable news media, whatever, like at the end of the day, they want clicks and eyeballs and audiences. And the way you get that is through outrage and stoking fear and anxiety and all those things, rather than, getting people to sit down and, recognize that, like, if you or me and almost anyone else, like, made a list of the things that were, top 10 things that are most important in our life or we think are most important for people, we probably agree on 7, 8, 9 of them. There might be one or two that are like, okay, we're not on the same page on that one. But if you see how much more common ground there is, I think that's just opportunity for a relationship.
Do you think that curiosity can foster empathy?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely believe that curiosity can foster empathy, and I think that it's just an understanding, right? I mean, what is empathy if not understanding to the point of being able to, feel how someone else feels, see how someone else sees, think how someone else thinks, and for me, like, I love doing that with food. Like, I love cooking and I love eating. And so for me, exploring different people's cultures, and Los Angeles is such an amazing place. Every kind of cuisine of the entire world exists here. And, just seeing how people eat tells you a lot,
So is that a training for you? I think it's curiosity, but it opens doors in doing so. No, like I have to reach into this culture because I like the food, but I want to understand, why do they cook the beans this way and the tortillas this way? So it gets curious, but it also opens up avenues of probably stuff that helps us understand better. I think I don't know if you're doing that intentional. I don't know. It's just maybe just like food and that's it. But I do see from the side, on the minority side, that when people do try to explore, like I have friends that, they tell me about their culture, and I'm like, man, you guys need to know our culture. Our culture is, we have great music, we have great food. Like, get to know us. We're really rad people. But it's that opening, like that window of allowing yourself to try it. But in your scenario, I don't know if you're doing it intentionally or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it comes from a place of just sort of interest, right? It's kind of like I like eating, I like food, so I'm interested in that. But then you see the dividends that pays off when you get to, uh, you get to know the people involved in the culture and the people who are making the food. My family and I got invited to a friend's. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but I think it's called a Chuseok. It's a Korean Thanksgiving. So for all the Korean listeners, I'm sorry that I butchered it, but it was great. And we didn't know anyone there, and we got to, yes, have delicious Korean food, but we got to just see more of this culture and spend time with people from all different cultures that were strangers to us. And to me, like, that's my favorite thing. Like, I just love hearing people's stories. I mean, we met a guy who is a photojournalist for like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and was, at the invasion of Ukraine, was in the fire, or, at the fires in Lahaina recently in Maui.
Wow.
And like, I just was like, give me more, give me more. Like, I just want to hear more and more of that story. And found out he was ex-military and Canadian and all these kind of crazy things. And so, and we're doing that, having a meal that's new to us. And so, yeah, I mean, it is certainly, I try to operate with intention in terms of just engaging people that I get to meet. And it's like, and it doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes you just don't hit it off with someone. Yeah. But when I'm talking to people, whether it's professionally or personally or whatever, part of being curious too is, I've amassed a little bit of knowledge about a lot of different things. And so I try to drop little breadcrumbs that are going to lead to more conversation. So if I notice that, someone's got a certain type of shoes or mentions a certain type of thing about their background or their education or their culture or something, like, I try to just pull on that thread a little bit to see where it leads. And it gets to be like an exciting discovery with people. And that's also something we've tried to teach the kids too. Like, being curious about people is such a valuable skill, because I think people really do want to be known. And the way that you help people be known is by spending time and asking them about themselves and having that curiosity.
Yeah, I do see that with your kids, that they try to see the people that's with them. They try to be present. It's pretty interesting. That's what I mean, like, to see them, they're kids, they're still under 18, they're teenagers, but to see them interact just with people in general, you could put a 30, 40-year-old and they're going to treat them like they're seeing the person and curious about their story. I've had some great advice given to me by your kids. And I think that's, it's a testament to you and Beth and what you guys have fostered there. You working in Hollywood, in that industry, I don't know how comfortable you are talking about the
anything.
Strike
sure.
Stuff.
Yeah.
How you feeling with all that stuff?
I'm really thankful that the studios and the companies made a deal for the writers that seems to address their issues and concerns. And so that's really exciting. And I hope that they do the same in the coming days and weeks with SAG, the Actors Guild, because people got to get back to work. I mean, it's not just actors or writers. It's producers, it's crew, it's, people with restaurants catering in LA who do, catering, like all of it. I mean, it's just really, it's really hard. And I think that, one of the things that companies try to tell people is that, like, oh, it's a family, like, we're all a family and blah, 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 blah. And like, it's not true, and I think that family is a really bad metaphor for working, for professional things. Like, I think team is so much better. Like, let's be a team. Like, let's go achieve things. Let's go win a championship. Not being a sports person doesn't mean that I don't see the value in, sports metaphors and things like that. Yeah. But, this idea of family, like, at the end of the day, these corporations are built to appease shareholders and maximize profits and minimize costs and spendings. And that means that people are the sacrifice. And I don't think it has to be that way. And I think that we can make choices that start to change those paradigms. And hopefully with these strikes resolving, we get to see some change in a positive direction. But we'll see. I mean, I love the people of this business. I love artists and dreamers and storytellers and all that kind of things. And I'm thankful for the companies that provide the money and the distribution and things to get to tell those stories. And so, we've all got to find a way to get back to working together. And that's going to be interesting, right? Because of social media and because of just where we are as a culture, there's so much negativity and kind of, unkind things said about the studios and the studio heads and one another. And, you know, I don't think it's fine. I mean, I get it, in terms of people's emotions and, the being upset was for sure legitimate, but they're going to have to find a way to get back in the room and rebuild
Forgive
that
each other.
relationship. Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to require some forgiveness and rebuilding of trust. And that stuff takes time.
How important is trust in everything? Like you're a producer, all the different arenas that you play in. How big is trust? I'll put it this way, because there are people that are trying to change careers, or people that are trying to get into the career, like at graduating college and stuff like that. I think trust is undervalued,
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to be important for people. And I think that's a lesson we learn the hard way sometimes. How important is it in all your industries that you're dabbling in?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, not everyone is trustworthy, but I think trust is super important because that's how you build a relationship. And part of that trustworthiness is just that, do I deliver on my commitments? Am I,
So you put on
uh,
your first.
yeah, oh, yeah, for sure. Because I think that's everything. Like, if they can't trust me, how on earth can I expect to trust them? And then sometimes trust is broken. And so then you got to have difficult conversations. But yeah, I think trust is super important. And then, I think in terms of trying to approach this industry, for people who are either trying to change careers or enter it for the first time, a thing that I've been thinking about a lot and I think is so important is, I, unfortunately, it rhymes and I hate rhyming bumper sticker type things, but essentially it's like, don't wait to create. Like, you can't wait for someone to give you permission or wait until the idea is perfect or wait until whatever. Like, you gotta just keep making things and doing things, and that's the hard work. Like, that's the hard part. And that doesn't mean that everything you make is going to be amazing. And uh there's beauty and importance in editing and refinement, but part of it's just getting reps and doing it over and over again. And that is something that we talk to the kids a lot about too, that like, you know perfection is not the point. Like, just try it, just experience it. Like, and that's the other thing, is in doing so you will gain empathy. Like, in the entertainment business, like holding a boom mic and doing craft services and driving a van or whatever, like all of that stuff will give you empathy for everyone else whose roles those are on the set and on the team and whatever. And in that then is an opportunity to build a relationship.
From the outside looking in, it looks like um, the one percenters, the A category actors. It seems like everything's nudged their way, and you kind of explained a little bit about how the networks need to make their money, and it's how can we expand and get the return, that those type of business scenarios. Do you see that? Because it wasn't the case before. It was kind of like the minor leagues to the pros. You had the minor leagues where they would work on TV and then they would go to movies. It usually wasn't a crossover, and now it seems like everything's crossing from film to TV because of streaming. Everything's getting produced, it seems like, faster. So in other words, the network wants to make their return quick as well. Do you think that could change for actors trying to get in, that it's not, they can be a working actor not being a big name?
Yeah, I mean, because everyone's got to start somewhere. I think that in the short term, with the strikes ending, I do think you're going to see the studios and the companies being more cautious and wanting to make more, quote unquote, sure bets or safe bets or whatever. But we've seen over and over, we saw it this summer, like in the box office, that, originality is always going to be interesting when it's of good quality, whether that's Oppenheimer, even Barbie. Like, you can say that, sure, that's, Barbie's a giant brand, but like the way they tackled that story was original in a way that people didn't expect, and they were rewarded for it, you know. And then, you know, it's hard to say. Like, I think that we are going to see more consolidation of buyers. I think you're going to see fewer places to make things, but then that creates opportunity for, you know, I mean, out of that came YouTube at once upon a time, and
Right.
you know, I mean, so there's always going to be new things that pop up, and you know, whether or not people can make a career out of these things, I don't know. Like, I think that it's really important for people to be able to have other skills and jobs that they can utilize during lean times. Like, it's not a plan B or, you know, or alternative plan or whatever. It's just like, to me, it's just wise. You know, it's like, what else can you be doing to stay in it? Because this business, you know, yes, sometimes there are overnight successes, but most overnight successes are 10 or 20 years in the making. And since it's a marathon and not a sprint, like, how are you going to train and how are you going to survive that marathon? So, you know, for me, like, I've always had a background or always done work in marketing and advertising during the slow times and the lean times. And, you know, that's allowed us to uh, survive as long as we have. You know, we've had some successes, but there's been plenty of periods where there's been nothing. There's been, you know, no movies being made. And so that's one thing too, is like how we've tried to really intentionally keep our lifestyle kind of at as reasonably small an amount monthly as possible, just so that we can weather more storms, you know, so making
Yeah,
sure that we're saving more. And yeah.
that's cool, man. That you said a little bit about, you use that sports metaphor about putting in the reps. uh, I'll say from my point of view, like, curiosity is something new that I've been exploring. Um, I think people, general people outside of LA, that haven't crossed the line of, I want to go as a, you know, this is my dream. I've known, since I've known Letty, my wife, I've known that she's wanted to be an actress. It's just always been there, and at some point she hit a threshold, and she's like, I have to go forward. It's not going to happen. And so we, as a couple, decided we're going to come to Los Angeles to help her succeed in that. And it's weird because I didn't have that DNA of the dreamer aspect. I had the dreamer in the sense of immigration, but I didn't have the dreamer aspect as in pursue and follow your dreams. And it's interesting because now, it feels like I'm late to the game. I've seen so many people, I've gotten to know so many people out here in Los Angeles, and it seems like that's common ground for, like, I'm the weird one that doesn't have the dream. But now getting into it and exploring, curiosity, and one of the things that's I can say this, that it's been life changing, is therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting to know myself better. What are my strengths? What are some things that are deep there that I didn't know were for me? And that's really helped me. And just in the podcasting world, it seems like, the sincere truth is there's no big return here. There's no big return as far as money goes. But I love stories. I love hearing, like, your story. I love hearing and talking to people and hearing what's worked for them. And who knows where this is going to go. I think that's my approach. Is it might take me somewhere else, and approaching the storytelling concept. I really love that. You just did your own storytelling. You did a movie. You want to tell the audience, because this is on Amazon Prime, right? It's on the streaming network.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll tell about the movie here in a minute, but I want to touch on some of the things you're saying. I mean, first of all, like, you're such a great example of, like, you do the thing, like, you create the thing. So, like, you know, you've built this brand, you've built this podcast, and you know, why do the things that we do have to equate to money, right? Like, sometimes it's just for the joy or for the learning, and we can still hope that it might turn into something with some financial reward, but I think the experience is really the reward, and then those experiences, you know, give you knowledge and insights that will then, you know, allow you to make different moves later on. So I think that stuff's super important. And, you know, with people who feel like they maybe have dreams or feel like they can't have dreams because of circumstances or whatever, um, I think there's always, it's important to always make time to do things that are life giving for you, whether that is, you know, something artistic or just taking a walk or just slowing down, taking some time to breathe. And, you know, not everything that we have to get after has to be for money.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something that we miss. And yeah, I get it. It's also, we got to make money. that's,
Yeah.
that's the way this world works. So that one's tricky. And then on sports, I will admit that. So I do actually love sports, but I'm from Seattle, and Seattle's not always had great sports teams. And so I grew up with the Mariners. We had some Ken Griffey Jr. era, but that was short lived, and some Ichiro. But
You guys had
and then,
Ray Allen with the Sonics for a bit, KD
wow, we'll talk
for a
about the
little
Sonics in
bit.
a second. But so the Seahawks weren't great until right about the time we moved, and then you I'm moving to LA. You want to talk about what team does a Seattle fan hate the most? Is any and all teams from LA. And then, as far as basketball goes, I love the Seattle Supersonics, and when they were stolen from us. Until Seattle has an NBA team again, I am not
Boycott.
I'm boycotting the NBA. No one cares that I'm boycotting it, but for me and
Yeah.
mine, I'm boycotting it. So getting back to the movie, yeah. So yeah,
Hold on before you jump on that. So right now you said about money's important, but why does it have to be about money? Where do you think there's a threshold? Like, do you think like if something's making you unhappy, is it worth sticking because you got to make a paycheck to pay your bills, or is there a threshold you think that you now need to revise your plan or review what you're trying to do?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think first of all, you've got to think about like what makes you like, where is your happiness derived from? And I don't think that work is necessarily where we should be finding our joy and happiness and purpose. However, we do spend a lot of our waking hours working because we got bills to pay and that kind of thing. And so I think that if you're unsatisfied in your job, I think it's thinking about what is a type of thing that I would be more satisfied doing. Uh, what does that pay, and what choices might I have to make differently? So you might have to move to a different city to pursue something that is more satisfying. You might have to, or if you're going to choose to live in an expensive city, you might have to choose to live in a smaller apartment or whatever that is. And so I think that with all these things, it's just about weighing out like, what is the choices? What am I willing to give up and sacrifice for that sense of satisfaction? And do I love it enough to do it even if I'm not getting paid? I mean,
Right.
you could be an actor doing local theater commercials or school performances or whatever and still derive joy and satisfaction while working a job. I think for people who want to be creative, I think if you can find a job that, pays your bills, but that also gives you enough mental and emotional space to create in the off hours, a place that you can go up and, you
Put your
know, yeah, but also like, like have a job that you don't hate, that you can go spend your 30, 40 hours a week doing it, that you can be, honor your commitment to that work. But then when that, day is done and you clock out, like now that's your time. And so what are you going to do with that time?
I don't think it's never too late. I think it does get harder as you get older, because you tack on stuff into your life, mortgages, kids, so the responsibility, goes higher. But I don't think there's ever like a it's now or never type of thing. I think you can build it out. At least that's been my experiences at 40, figuring this, what I enjoy doing. And right now I can call it a hobby because it doesn't pay. It's not a career, but it's fun. It's rewarding. It's uh, this past Saturday, Disney did Disney Days, and they did an event for foster kids, and it was incredible. Like, I've known I wanted to help with kids since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 40 now, but it never like connected that it's something that I should intertwine. It's just something I really wanted to give back to other kids. And being there and seeing the kids smile, that was worth any paycheck I ever got.
I love that.
And that to me is like the lesson I took from it was just get close to them. It might turn into something bigger, it might not, but I'm still doing something I love. So if I can get closer and be around them more and more, it might turn into, there's my threshold. Like, I can't do this. I can't be in two places at once.
Yep.
And enough, if someone believes in you enough, they might, buy into what your brand per se.
Totally.
And it was amazing, man. Like, you can't, $1 million is not worth that smile. That smile was everything. So to see like little kids and reunite with their siblings, and there was space for that. Um, it was really interesting to me because it wasn't about Disney when they got there. They were being reunited with their siblings because in foster care, some families can't take 2 or 3 siblings together,
Right.
so then they separate them. And sometimes, like one of the stories I heard, they'd gone 4 years without seeing their sibling. So for them, when they reunited, the first hour we were at Disney, it was their excitement was about each other. And it wasn't until like about an hour when we started walking down Main Street that they started seeing where they were, and the excitement was like almost like with each other, like pushing each other. Like, can you believe we're seeing this? And for them to see, like, the thing I remembered the most in my mind that kept playing back is the noises they would make, the sounds they would make when they would see, like when they saw Matterhorn. To them, that mountain, for some reason, one of the little boys was, I think he was like 5 or 6, and he goes, and that sound, I was like, he's seeing something that's gonna create something in his mind that he's never seen before, and that was magical. But to hear those sounds and that smile, I don't think I can. Yeah, there's no compensation for me. That's just something that's worth doing anytime I can do it. And if that turns into, whether it's through podcasting or my nonprofit, to continue to do that, at some point, I just feel that the closer you get around the thing that makes you happy, eventually it'll turn into something. Just there are costs along the way.
Totally. No, I think that's amazing. And I think that, what a gift that you guys and others were able to give those kids. And, I recognize that, the ability to dream and create and do this stuff comes from a place of privilege and of margin. And I realize that for a lot of people, they don't have that. And so then how can we, anyone, like, use our whatever privilege or whatever margin we've got to help other people? Because it can't just all be about us, And so for me, it is about my kids, but it's also about my community and the people around. And to your earlier point, you're right. Like, I don't think that it's ever too late to go after things you want to do. I think you have to be honest with yourself about, like, what are the limitations? What are the circumstances? What might that look like? You might have to play the game differently. You might have different options. But I think there's always a way. I think people too often limit themselves in their thinking and go, it's either option A or option B. And I'm like, no, there's like a million options.
Still Z.
Yeah. But you have to be willing to explore those. And then also just, again, being honest with yourself. So, if you are, I don't know, 56 years old and you want to be an NFL quarterback, there's probably very limited options in which that could happen, right? I mean,
there's not a whole lot of Tom Brady's out there.
No, but then why is that important? Why is it important to be an NFL quarterback? Why could you not, coach whatever, some kind of football team, or participate in the sport in a different way, or be around the people doing the thing that you love? Like, I think that we also then limit our options in terms of what does that all look like? It's like, could there be other avenues within those things that might, derive a lot of joy and satisfaction?
Yeah. The movie you produced, it's weird, man, because so I'm not big on movies, and it's weird because I'm in Hollywood, but I've been curious enough to try and see more movies. I'm the time that my attention span's so short. If I'm sitting down, I'll start to doze off. So I intentionally, like, even now, like, if someone recommends a movie, I have to stand up in front of the TV so that I won't fall. And it's a plan, like, it's a full-on
so good.
But your movie, like, it was amazing, man, because it's a true story, but you're still falling in love with the characters, that you're rooting for the characters, but it's a true story. You know what's supposed to happen or what's going to happen. And I think that's the, like, I was talking to my wife about it. I think that's the beauty in the storytelling, that you get so engaged in the two main characters. They're pulling you in their personalities, but you can't help but root for both of them. Can you tell us about your movie? What got you to bring that out for us?
Sure, yeah. So the movie is called Sitting in Bars with Cake, and it is out now on Amazon Prime. We made the movie a year ago in Los Angeles, and it's out now. And yeah, so it's a female friendship story. And without giving too many things away, it's, you've got one friend who's unlucky in love, and her vivacious best friend is helping her, with a strategy to put herself out there, meet some guys, and then one of them gets a life changing diagnosis, and really just becomes about their relationship. And what drew me to this story, and increasingly the types of things that I'm wanting to produce and develop, um, is just really about the exploration of truth, and truthfulness of relationships. I think that there's so much beauty in truth and truth in beauty. And that doesn't mean that it can't be some crazy sci-fi epic, but what's the emotional truth? What's that deeper message? And I think that, in Sitting Bars with Cake, it really is about like the truth about friendships, the good, the hard, the messy about it, and then why those are worthwhile even in really, really challenging circumstances. And I think that's what resonates with people.
Yeah. No, it was really good, man. I'm Letty's more of a critic because she's in the industry and she watches everything. Even her feedback was like, she was really in love with the character, the actress that was diagnosed, the character.
Mm-hmm.
She said her levels of playing the character was so deep, and it didn't seem like she was playing it. Like, it just seemed natural. And I think that's when you get gravitated into the stories, when they're like, me not being in the industry, and I have friends in here who are, so this won't really hit for them, but I still take it as a lesson for myself. Letty was telling me the best actors are the best reactors. They're just listening. It's not so
Yep.
much about being acting, but
Yep.
reacting to the storyline, reacting to the words. And I think that's the powerful, like, that's not necessarily acting. That's empathy. That's being curious about each other. And then that pulls you to react of, we may not agree on this, but I at least want to understand where you're coming from. And I think that moves the needle so much further.
Totally. And I think it's a huge lesson in life. Like, you know, being a good listener creates relationship. It creates closeness, it creates intimacy. And then that is something we're attracted to. When we see it on screen, when we see and believe those relationships, it draws us in. And so many of us, and I'm guilty of it, like, you're just waiting for your turn to talk. And instead, like, can we actually hear and listen and get to know those people? So Letty's right on.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. It was a pleasure, bro. Like, this was really cool. I really want to thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for inviting me. I think this is such a cool just format and opportunity, and I see your heart in it. I see your curiosity, and it's been a privilege. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Cool.